High in the heart of the Alps, where the wind never stops howling and time seems to freeze over, a secret was waiting. Hidden beneath layers of glacial ice, undisturbed for thousands of years, it waited, not to be buried, but to be found. And one day, it was. A couple hiking off the beaten path thought they'd spotted a stick or maybe a backpack poking out of the melting snow. But as they came closer, the shape took form. A body. Curled up, skin brown and leathery. At first they thought it must have been a lost mountaineer, maybe from World War I. They had no idea what they'd stumbled upon. Nobody did. They reported it to a local innkeeper who called the authorities. Soon, a recovery team arrived with ice picks and a jackhammer. The body was frozen solid. They chipped it out, loaded it into a helicopter, and flew it to a nearby village. It wouldn't even fit in the coffin. They had to break the arm just to shut the lid. When it arrived at the Institute of Forensic Medicine in Austria, a routine investigation turned into something extraordinary. An archaeologist took one look and said, "This isn't just old, this is ancient." Carbon dating confirmed what no one could have imagined. This man had been dead for over 5,000 years. He died in the Copper Age. This was not just a corpse. This was a window into the past. A man who had walked the earth before cities, before books, before most of what we call civilization. His name would become legendary: Ötzi the Iceman. Ötzi's body was unlike anything researchers had ever seen. He was what scientists call a wet mummy, preserved naturally in ice. His bones, skin, and even internal organs were intact. His teeth were worn down, his lungs blackened with soot. He had hardened arteries, a broken nose, fractured ribs. He had gallstones. His body told the story of a hard life. But that wasn't all it told. Tattooed lines and crosses marked his back, his knees, his ankles. 61 tattoos in total, not decorative. They lined up almost perfectly with areas where he suffered from arthritis. Early acupuncture, perhaps. Stone Age therapy. He carried mushrooms too, one used for starting fires, the other a powerful antiseptic. He may have used it to treat wounds or even ease his pain. He also suffered from Lyme disease, the oldest known case in human history. For someone who lived 53 centuries ago, he had a surprising medical toolkit. And that wasn't even the most shocking part. In his satchel were tools and weapons: a dagger, arrows, a quiver, and a finely crafted copper axe, one of the oldest ever discovered. His clothes were a patchwork of hide and leather, sewn with grass fibers. His shoes were lined with hay for insulation. He wore a bearskin cap and a backpack made of wood and animal skin. Everything he carried had a purpose. He was prepared. But for what? Here's where the mystery deepens. Ötzi hadn't just laid down and died. He was fleeing. He had walked for miles from the Vinschau Valley. He had a deep cut on his hand, likely from a fight days before. Several arrows were missing from his quiver, and one, a flint arrowhead, was lodged in his back. The shot pierced an artery. He bled out within minutes. This wasn't an accident. This was a murder. But who killed him? And why? His body was found alone, face down, in a shallow trench between two rocks. Not buried, not placed with care or ceremony. No one came for him, no one mourned, and so he remained untouched by time until that melting summer day in 1991. As scientists examined his body and belongings, they began to uncover secrets that rewrote history. For years, we thought humans of his time lived in small, static groups, but Ötzi's DNA told another story. He had brown eyes, dark hair, and O blood type. He was lactose intolerant. And here's the twist. His closest genetic relatives today aren't found in Austria or Italy, but on the island of Sardinia. Why? Because Sardinia, isolated and uninvaded for centuries, preserved the genetic fingerprint of Europe's first farmers. Ötzi was one of them. Not a hunter-gatherer, but a man born of a farming culture, carrying the legacy of people who migrated from Anatolia, modern-day Turkey. His ancestors were pioneers of agriculture in Europe. But that raises more questions. If he was a farmer, why was he carrying a bow and arrows? Why was he hiking through the mountains with weapons, dressed like a survivalist, traveling alone? Researchers believe he might have been a trader or even a chieftain, someone of importance. His copper axe would have been a status symbol, valuable beyond measure. Maybe he was ambushed for it. Maybe he was betrayed. His last meal was ibex meat and einkorn wheat porridge. He was strong enough to hunt, but also relied on farming. A man between two worlds, a symbol of change. And then, there were his tattoos. Using multispectral imaging, scientists uncovered previously invisible ink. New tattoos, hidden just below the surface. The more they found, the more questions they had. Were these markings intended for healing? Were they symbols of belief or traces of ancient rituals? Maybe all three. In life, Ötzi walked between the past and the future. In death, he became a bridge to both. Even now, decades after his discovery, we continue to learn from him. Every year, researchers unlock new clues from his DNA, from his tools, even from his stomach contents. They found traces of ancient pollen, suggesting he moved between high and low altitudes in his final days. A man in motion, even at the end. And what of his legacy? In a lab in Missouri, artist Gary Staub spent months recreating Ötzi, sculpting his face, his wounds, even his twisted hip and fraught. Study and understand. It wasn't about making him beautiful. It was about making him real. As real as the pain he endured. As real as the arrow that ended his life. Today, the original body lies in a sterile chamber in Bolzano, Italy. Constantly cooled to -6 degrees Celsius, sprayed with sterile water to prevent decay. He's watched over, studied, and protected, because Ötzi is more than a mummy. He's a message in a bottle, thrown across time, a whisper from a world we barely understand. He lived a life of hardship, he endured, he fell, but by a strange stroke of destiny, his death became a lesson, one that reveals not just who we once were, but who we may still be. Because every time we look at him, we don't just see a man frozen in ice. We see ourselves carved into the edge of history, holding on to life with weathered hands, staring into the wild, and wondering if someone thousands of years from now might find us too.